Hey there, it's Tessa with Hip Over 50s, coming to you today from Portugal. I decided to get out of the UK for a couple of weeks during the winter months, and I'm very glad that I did. And that is something that you could do as well. You could be a part-time expat to the UK, which gives you time to come over here and explore Europe. I mean, there are so many things to see in Europe. It's great having it kind of on your doorstep. It's only like a 2.5 hour flight from London to Portugal, the south of Portugal. So how does it work? What does being a part-time expat mean anyway? Well, when I first started coming over to England, I said, I want to be here for at least 6 months out of the year. I want to have the best of both worlds. I don't want to give up this culture. And I kind of wanted to kind of keep my foot in the door in the US as well. But as it turns out, I am now a full-time resident in the UK, but you are allowed to come over, whether you're a resident or not, or can qualify for a visa. You can come over here for up to 6 months, no limit. And there isn't any 6 months within a year or 6 months within whatever. No, it's just up to 6 months at a time. So why not take advantage of that? I know it's tempting to think, yeah, I want to move out of the country, but come over here, experience life first, and see if it's right for you. So there isn't any 90 days out of 180 days rule like there is in Europe. It is pretty sweet, I think. And you can do this without a visa. And the only question is, can you do it with the budget that you have? Because you'll be away for longer periods of time. So obviously housing, accommodation in two places can be your biggest expense, that and transportation. So let's see what the solutions are, shall we? One, you can do what I did, was keep a base in your home country. And that gets a little expensive. Coming over here, renting Airbnbs or short-term rentals, that adds up. So maybe that's not a problem for you. But if it is, one of the ways you can offset it is to rent out your home in the US while you're away. Put it up on Airbnb. I would highly recommend getting a management company to do that for you, but that is one way to offset having double housing or accommodation costs in both countries. And I think, yeah, there's also a lot of different options you can do. You could even do something called a home exchange, which you may or may not have heard of. Find somebody in the UK in an area that you'd like to be based in and see if they want to come and stay in your place in the US. And then your housing costs are the same across the board. So another option you could do if you don't want to do that is just downsize your home where you live. Maybe you've got a single family home, maybe you're retired, you don't need all that room. Why not downsize to, a villa, a townhome, a condo, even an apartment? Maybe cut your costs in half and use that additional capital to travel and to explore life and being a part-time expat over here. Also, having something like an apartment or a townhome, it's a lot less maintenance. You can just lock it and go when you're ready. So keeping a base in the US and keeping a base here is one option. How do you keep a base here? Well, you're legally able to buy a home here, even if you're not a resident. You cannot sign up on a 12-month lease agreement for an apartment or a house, but you can buy a home here. So let's say you downsize in the US, take some money out, get some equity out of that, turn around and plop down a nice big down payment or possibly buy cash here in the UK, and then you have a home in both places that are paid for. And then you've got the freedom and flexibility to offset any additional expenses by renting them out while you're away. Or if you don't want to buy a home here, if you want to be able to be a little more flexible, then you can look into renting privately or through a short-term rental agency. There are a lot of them here. It's not just Airbnb. There are a ton of different holiday letting agencies here. That is what I used when I first started coming over. And what does it cost to do that? Well, I did a quick search on Airbnb and I found that a 30-day rental in the month of February, which granted is not high season, varied from £1,400 a month up to £28,000 a month. So, and everything in between. I think probably the average is probably around £3,000 to £5,000 a month. But that £1,400 a month one looked pretty cute. So there you go. That's not too unaffordable. And also, if you do rent for 28 or 30 days on Airbnb, most owners will give you a discount, a nice discount for renting for that period of time because it's less wear and tear on their property and on them. So what are the other costs besides housing that you would expect as a part-time expat? Well, the only thing I would really recommend was, maybe get a UK phone number, get a SIM card, which is less than $20 a month, and just have a UK phone. I started off with a cheap phone, but then I hated it. So I just ended up upgrading my iPhone, and then I used my old iPhone as my UK phone. So that's one expense. Groceries, well, that's not going to be an additional cost for you because you have to eat wherever you are, but I think they're actually a little less expensive here. The average, they say, is about 75 pounds or about $85 for two people for a week. The only other expense I think that would be more would be gas or petrol, as they call it here, for your car. If you do rent a car and you plan on driving around, it could be double or triple what you're used to in the U.S. So there you go. Not a huge number of additional costs. I'll get to some more later, but consider is how are you going to get around when you're over here? Well, of course, we all have cars in the U.S., so you probably have your car parked in your garage while you're away. By the way, you could rent it out via Airbnb style Turo app if you're in the US and you want to rent your car out while you're away. If you want to have a car here, you can either rent one traditionally. If you want to drive automatic, expect to pay a premium. So what you could do is just use public transportation. When I first came over here, I lived in a town called Lewis, which is just outside of Brighton and south of London, and it had a great train station, but it never felt the need of getting a car. I could get into and out of Brighton, for example, on the bus. I could get down to the coast on the train or the bus, and I could get up to London on the train very easily and get to Gatwick Airport, even more importantly. So that was very easy. I didn't realize how easy I had it until I moved away from that kind of a base. So I would highly recommend you choose the airport that you will be flying into and out of the most, whether Gatwick or Heathrow, and kind of look within an hour around there to see where you might want to keep your base. You can always travel from there, but that's where you might want to keep your base for ease of movement. So, a train, but it's about $75 round trip from London to Bath, or about $20 round trip from London to Brighton. So not too bad. And then you're just paying for it when you want it. You're not paying to have a car sitting on the driveway all the time. Another thing you can do is use a car sharing service here. That is quite affordable. And then again, you're just paying for it when you need it. You can drive here for up to 12 months without getting a UK license. So if you come over for 6 months, go home, come back, it resets each time you come over. So you should be okay because you're not allowed here to stay for up to 12 months anyway. So what are the other expenses or costs to consider if you did want to become a part-time expat? Well, you may want to get a post office box or a mail forwarding service back in your home country, like in the U.S., unless you have somebody to forward your mail for you. If you're going to be gone for a long period of time, I would suggest obviously getting most of your mail delivered digitally to your email. Or consider the cost to fly back and forth. Again, it all depends in the U.S. where you live. The East Coast is quite reasonable, very affordable. In the middle of the country, it gets a little more tricky, it gets a little more expensive. So look at how close you want to be to a major airport in the U.S., as well as how close you want to be to one here, if this is something you're going to be doing ongoing. Consider you'll have probably additional maintenance on your home in both places if you rent them out, because let's face it, if you're going to Airbnb, there will be additional maintenance costs. And hopefully you'll have some tax deductions too. You might have some repairs that you expect. So again, keep that in mind. That's not something that is an additional cost to being a part-time expat, but if you have two homes, yeah, it is an additional cost. If you come over here and you get hit by a truck, then NHS will get you to the we'll get you to the emergency room, but from that point on, if you are admitted to the hospital, you are on the hook for the cost. So I would definitely advise getting a private health insurance policy while you're here. So there you go. My top tips to become a part-time expat are consider that the two major things that are going to be doubled potentially are your home and your transportation expenses. So think about how you can offset those in some way. Also, plan in advance. Book well in advance if you are coming over during the shoulder season or the high season. I would suggest coming in the off season. It's quieter, it's easier to get around, and you will get better deals on everything from transportation to accommodation. Live near a train station. That's all I can say. It makes life so much easier. Do a budget to see what your monthly expenses will be in both places and be prepared. And if you're like me and you went back and forth, you might find a little storage space here or there is very handy. When I came over for 6 months, you naturally accumulate stuff. You just can't help it. You want to make your place feel more like home. So I just popped it all in a storage facility in Lewis and then went back to Colorado, then came back over here and took it out and did it all over again. So that is a little additional expense, but it's very helpful. And it's a great place to stash luggage that you don't need, or if you bought clothes here that you wouldn't wear back home, you can keep them in the storage space. So there you go. I've done a great blog post on alternative places to stay. You can stay on everything from a narrowboat to a spare room. So take a look at that. I will put the link below. And I think being a part-time expat is definitely having the best of both worlds. And why shouldn't you? It's a great lifestyle. I love it over here in Europe, and I think you will too. So come on over. Any comments, put them below. Any questions, of course, I'll try to answer them. And again, thank you so much for watching. Sorry I've been MIA for a while. I have been planning on coming to Portugal, and it just got away from me. So I hope to be in touch with you more often in the future. And if you have any ideas for future videos, put those below as well. So bye for now. See you on the next one.